Okay, so our next speaker is Jim Forster. You saw earlier on I asked him to stand up when I was basically taking us through the 20 years of AFNOG. And I deliberately didn't want to mention his name because I was going to introduce him anyway. So Jim Forster is basically passionate about extending the internet. He started at Cisco in 1998 when it was quite small and spent 20 years there becoming a distinguished engineer. And while at Cisco, he started working on projects and policies to improve internet access in developing countries. He's been working with several non-profit organizations to extend communication in unserved areas within Africa, in India. And his foundation, networkingtheworld.org, has supported AFNOG, AFCHICS mostly, and he has also invested in ISP, in 4 ISPs in Africa, from Mawingu Network in Kenya, Too Much Wi-Fi in South Africa, Habari Node in Tanzania, and CTN in Malawi, as well as in India, AirJelly. He and Ben Matanga have started a debt fund, connectivitycap.com, basically to offer loans to ISPs in frontier markets. A round of applause for Jim Forster.
So I realize that with delays that I am standing between us and lunch. I hope I will not get plowed over if we get hungry or something like that. Oh, where's the advance? How do I do this? Oh, here. Okay, good. So Noah had a nice introduction. Thank you. Oops. Here we go. So some of you may have seen this famous shirt that it had the 7-layer models. This was at IETF one time. And they stuck 2 more on there because they said, oh, besides the technical ones, now there's the financial and the political one. Well, today we are here at the financial level. And you say, well, finance is a technical conference. We want to make networks. We don't want, well, finance is important. Dollars are important. The engineer who does not care about dollars probably does not care about how much storage he uses, how much bandwidth he needs. They're all related. So, and my career as I moved from distinguished engineer at Cisco, now a junior business person, I think that, you know, have to keep learning. So I love coming to these things. I learn things at these sort of events. I look back and I realize I've come to AFNOG since about 4 times, 2006 through 9, AFPIF rather. I think it was maybe twice, 17 or 16 and 18. But then I've been 10 years investing in Africa and India, and small companies, technical, recently mostly ISPs, some others too. So more information about those is at iniholdings.com. So a little bit more about these investments. So there's interesting stories about all of them. In Jaldi in India, and Jaldi is a Hindi word that means hurry up, quick, quick. So it's a good name for a wireless ISP. And the cool thing about that, or one of the cool things, is that we have about 130 people, and most of the staff came in with very little technical skills. Jaldi trained them. And we now have people that came in with very little, but now are managing 10 people, have technical responsibility for an area, HR responsibility, customer responsibility, revenue responsibility. And they came in with nothing, and now they're doing very well. So that's cool. Kenya, Mawingu, you may have heard about. Microsoft was involved, and I got involved, and it was known as the TV White Space Network. Well, the TV White Space is a fantastic policy initiative, but it hasn't yet been adopted in all countries. So we've gone back to doing regular sort of Wi-Fi, microwave, fiber even. It's great. Another company in South Africa, Too Much Wi-Fi. It's a funny name because have ever of you ever had too much Wi-Fi? Well, that's what they say, we're too much. Tanzania, Habari Node. Some of you know Eric Roberg, he started it, and he said pretty much all his engineers came through this process. So that's how things work. Malawi, we invested in last year. Brian Longway, which was mentioned several times, is, you know, from the early days of AFNOG. He's the founder of the network company called CTN in Malawi. So that's what we're doing in the equity investments. But now there's another way to invest, and we'll talk about that or another. So here's the purpose of this talk. Large ISPs thrive on economies of scale. They get better pricing on bandwidth, they get better pricing on equipment, they get their operations smooth. So how do you do that if you're starting out? You say, well, gee, the big guys are bigger. I can't do it. You can, but you have to watch what you're doing. So the thing is to look at what are your specific financing needs and what is the consideration of why do you want financing and what are the different kinds of financing? So what is capital for growth? It depends on where you are in your company cycle. Companies start from somewheres and they go somewhere. Some don't survive, some get big. Now, a little side note about community networks. Some of you have heard of, there's a lot of activity. ISOC has been active. It's possibly a way to increase penetration at low cost. Principally, I would say by leveraging social assets. So instead of just purely financial assets and arm's length transactions, the community is heavily involved. So there's a couple of great examples. Internet Society has been leading a big initiative for several years, Africa summits and things like that. And I think they said they have 25 active now in 13 countries. But some of the networks that companies that we've invested in started as community networks. Arusha Node Marie, Eric's company, that was an association, that was a Tanzanian community network, even before the internet. And then it evolved into, it said, well, we needed to be a little more organized. They organized as a commercial company. Now they have about 100 employees. They host the Arusha Exchange Point. So it's transitioned from a community network, as it were, to a thriving little company. Same thing with Air Jaldi. It started as a community network in 2006. 2009, it was registered as a private company in India, put a little bit of money in it. They've been growing since then. So now about 130 employees in I guess, about 8 states. So talking about company lifestyle, little ones, big ones, this is a sort of generic chart from young to older to small to large. How about an ISP? Well, you start off, sweat equity is what you do. You say, I can do it. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to 2 pieces of equipment. I'm going to connect them. And then you say, well, okay, we're getting some initial traction. I can maybe borrow some money from my father or my uncle or something like that, or friends will pool together. We'll make something. Or possibly you get some grant funding there. Internet Society has made funds, done some grants. ISIF is a nice organization and process out of the APNIC. Paul Wilson is here, so we're working with them a little bit. Now, if you get some initial success, then is when you might apply for equity funding or try and negotiate equity funding. And however, then if you get going a little bit more, call it takeoff, then you have growth capital. So that's when you have something going on and you know what you're doing and you want to do more. So you've demonstrated some initial success, but you want to expand. That's when you can take growth capital from loans or possibly institutional investors, equity investors. Finally, the last stage, you made it, you're big, you go to the capital markets, you're kind of, well, it's not easy there to stay there, but that's maybe success or final stage. So if you have a network, what do you want to expand it? Where are you in the company life cycle? And what is the true cost of capital? So everyone says, well, I need a loan or I need some investment. What does it cost? It takes time. You're going to spend time working this, months. A CEO of a small company that's going through a funding round, 90% of their time is not running the business anymore. It's talking to investors. Think about that. If you're a CEO of a small company and you want to raise money, the company better run itself because you're going to be out raising money. So, and then what type of control are you willing to give up? Because investors, they want to pay attention. They want to say, no, don't do that. You should do this. So you're going to give up some control. That's the way it is. You take money, you give up some control. Shares, governance. But the funny thing is, the cheapest form of financing is sales. Just sell more. You don't owe anyone. You have full control. And you're demonstrating success. So however you do it, sales is the best financing. Now, let's talk about the different types of financing. Mentioned grants, mentioned equity, mentioned debt. This is quite interesting. So they apply typically at different stages of the company lifestyle. So grants, it's nice, it's non-dilutive, it just comes. The grantees are tolerant of risk. That's why they're doing it, because they want to see new things happen. Difficulty is you have cyclical availability. Some grantees say, well, you missed the window. We just closed last month. Apply next year, please. So wow, 10 months later. There's reporting requirements, sometimes quite heavy. There's restrictions on use. And really what is the other thing about it, others control your fate. You have to say, please, can I have some more money? Well, that's anyhow. Now, equity is another form. That's where you're selling shares. And okay, there's no interest payments. That's nice. But there's a longer term expectation. You're going to, be successful later. It dilutes ownership. So you sell 20% of the company, then someone else has got it. And there was also, this is a little tricky, I've come to understand this, investors want to know, okay, when do I get my money back? So they talk about a liquidity event. There's two ways you can get the money back, dividends or a liquidity event. That's when you sell the company to someone else. And now the other form of investment that we've been doing lately is debt. So that's for growth stage. You're up and running, you know your business, your expenses are a little bit less than your income. That's great. If your expenses are less than your income, you can get money. That's what banks are in the business of doing. That's what we're doing. So you do have to make repayments, and there is interest as well. So there's no free lunch. You have to pay this stuff. But it doesn't dilute your company. You're not giving up shares, and it's for a period of time. You pay that back, then great, you're good. So there's trade-offs in all of this: economics, control, transaction costs. The important thing is, why are you doing this? What do you want to do with your company, your ISP? So you got to think about that in the next year and a half, 3 years. Then think, what will you be financing? Operational losses or network expansion? You want to build a new POP, or you want to put fiber down this section of the town, or you're going to finance customer equipment because they say, because it's, if you were previously asking for installation costs, the customer must buy the CPE. That's a little bit of a barrier. So you could say, if we can finance the customer equipment, then we can provide it as part of the service and it'll come back later. So those are three different types. However, operational losses, do not try and finance that. It just won't work. If you're losing money and you borrow money, it's not going to help it. So finally, the last stage is when, where, how. This is detailed. You're looking at your expenses, you're planning how you're going to expand the network. That's where you dig in and say, how are we going to do it? It sounds simple, but you have to have honest answers to this. You have to say, how can we do it? You can't say, oh, well, it'll be great, just give us money. You have to be honest with yourself. Otherwise, you'll be wasting your own time. So my colleague, Ben Matranga, and I have set up a new thing, a debt fund. And we are in the business of making loans to small companies that want to expand, small ISPs. We only do networking stuff. We don't do fintech, we don't do apps. We do ISPs. So the objective is to expand the capital available for the internet, especially in frontier markets. I learned that term. So roughly you have to be in business for a couple years. We're looking for a turnover of $250,000. You say, gee, I'm not that big, I can't do it. Keep working, get there, come back next year. That's great. We're looking for audited financial and management accounts. Okay, if you're a registered company, you kind of have to do that anyhow. And then you should have appropriate licenses and memberships. So, membership of AFRINIC, attendance in these sort of things. We're looking for community engagement, community involvement. So what do we do in this? We're in the business of offering loans, 200,000 to 2 million. Wow, it's a big number, but well, some of you could use it, or some of the people here are from companies that, we don't need that, we're past that. That's great. Term up to 3 months. And flexible arrangements. So we're not asking for, oh, where's the deed to your house or your building? Do you own the building? We're looking at your business, your cash flow. That's a little different. Banks here don't typically do that. But we think we can assess the credit risk by knowing the industry. So how do you do it? Well, let's see. I'll just skip ahead. Here's roughly what it is. Qualification: complete a short outline, a short form online. We'll work with you to identify the options, and if it looks good, then we'll dig in and we'll get into the underwriting process, which is a detailed look at the finances, and then make a decision whether it's go or no go. And to be honest, we expect a lot of applicants, and we expect not so many to complete the cycle. That's okay. Might be come back next year, or do this or this. Keep trying. Don't give up. So you can apply online. There's the URL. My colleague Ben there has some little brochures. Leave him your business card, register online, and get going and build the internet. Thanks all.
Of course, any questions for Jim? Thank you so much. Any questions? Come on, I know we are all mostly layer 1 to layer 7 people. The layer 8 is important, and Jim is telling you to talk to him.
Thank you, Jim. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, so my name is Komi, and thank you for this presentation, very interesting. And I would like to hear from you regarding our environment in Africa. What are the main challenges when it comes to developing or expanding business in the ISP world?
Sure. Challenges in Africa, especially ISPs. Well, there's some simple ones. Logistics are difficult, clearing customs. You cannot, in the US, we can just order Amazon, it comes in 1 or 2 days. Great, it's easy. But more importantly and tougher is the regulatory environment. So there's always challenges there. It's a lot better than it used to be. But the government always wants to help, but sometimes their involvement is less helpful. So I like a nice open environment. And I don't like it when they say, oh, but for security reasons, we need to control the exchange point. That puts me off. That says, well, maybe it's not ready for investment. The government's going to control everything. So I would say the #1 challenge is the regulatory environment. And it varies widely. You can't say, oh, in Africa is this. It's Kenya, it's Malawi, it's Uganda, it's Rwanda. Each is different.
Okay. Thank you. One last question. Okay, can I? Okay. So, do you think there is some value in improving a local trade between African countries?
The trade between African countries?
Yes. Is
Absolutely.
there any value there?
Absolutely. And if I look back from when I first came to Africa, I think it was 2003, everything had to go to a satellite, and then it would go to London, and then it would go back up to the satellite and come down. Now there is pretty good cross-border fibers. Needs to be much, much more. That's cross-border trade. And then there can be cross-border commerce. There certainly is cross-border money transfer. And yes, absolutely. And the internet enables that as well, as do roads. We need roads too. So
thank you.